Imagine this. You're standing at the mouth of a cave 400,000 years ago. The sun is going down. The temperature is dropping fast. And in your hand, you're holding the only thing standing between you and the dark. A small glowing ember. If it goes out, you don't just lose warmth. You lose light. You lose protection. You lose the one thing that separates you from every predator circling outside that cave right now. So you crouch down, you shield it with your body, and you feed it, twig by twig, because tonight keeping this ember alive isn't a chore. It's the difference between seeing tomorrow and not. For most of human history, fire wasn't a convenience, it was an obsession, and the story of how we learned to control it, protect it, and eventually create it from nothing might be the single most important survival story we never talk about. Today, fire is a button, a lighter, a stove knob, a match you strike without even thinking. You've probably never once worried about losing it. But for early humans, fire was the rarest, most fragile resource on Earth. And for hundreds of thousands of years, most of them couldn't even make it. They could only keep it. Let's talk about how far back this goes. There's evidence of controlled fire use going back at least 400,000 years at a site called Kisem Cave in Israel. And some researchers push that number even further, arguing for controlled fire as far back as 1 million years at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. That's almost 1 million years of humans and human ancestors sitting around a flame before anyone figured out how to strike one from scratch. Because here's the thing nobody realizes. Controlling a fire that already exists and creating a fire from nothing are two completely different skills. One is about protection, the other is about chemistry, friction, timing, and years of trial and error. For most of human history, people were extremely good at the first one and terrifyingly bad at the second. So what did they do? They didn't lose fire. They moved it. Groups carried embers with them, literally carried them wrapped and protected from one camp to the next. Smoldering coals wrapped in green leaves that wouldn't catch flame but would keep the ember breathing. Or packed inside something even smarter, a type of woody mushroom called tinder fungus, which could hold a spark and smolder quietly inside itself for hours without ever fully dying out. It was in every sense a biological lighter, something that grew on trees and could keep a species alive. And we're not just guessing about this, we have proof. In 1991, hikers in the Alps found a body frozen in the ice for over 5,000 years, Ötzi the Iceman. And when scientists went through his belongings, they found something remarkable. A complete fire-starting kit tucked into his belt pouch, tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite for striking sparks, and extra plant tinder as backup in case the first attempt failed. Think about that. 5,000 years ago, in an era we associate with early farming and organized settlements, a single traveling man was still carrying dedicated equipment whose entire purpose was to make sure he never lost fire. That's how serious this was. Even after we'd figured out agriculture, writing was still thousands of years away, and fire was still something you prepared for losing, because losing it wasn't a minor setback. It was a 5-alarm emergency. Think about everything fire actually did for early humans. It wasn't just warmth. A dying fire on a cold night meant hypothermia within hours, especially for anyone wet, injured, or very young. It was light, the only thing pushing back the absolute darkness of a world with no other artificial illumination. It was protection, because almost nothing on Earth, no leopard, no hyena, no cave bear, wants to walk into open flame. And it was food. Cooking didn't just make meat taste better. It made calories more accessible, killed parasites, and some researchers argue it's one of the reasons the human brain was able to grow as large as it did. Cooked food is easier to digest, which means more energy left over for everything else your body needs to do. So when rain hit, when a storm rolled in and lasted for days, the first priority in any camp wasn't shelter. It wasn't food. It was the fire. Move it deeper into the cave, away from wind and water. Shield it with hides or brush. Feed it constantly, but carefully, because too much fuel too fast could smother it just as easily as rain could. And this required actual knowledge. You couldn't just throw any wood on it. You needed dead lower branches from coniferous trees, the ones still protected by the canopy above which stayed dry even in a downpour. You needed to split open wet logs to get at the dry wood hiding inside. And if you were smart, you used birch bark as kindling, because birch contains a natural compound called bitumen that is genuinely flammable even when soaked. Ancient humans knew this. They knew which trees to strip, which wood to split, which bark would catch a spark even in the middle of a storm. Sometimes one person's entire job during a multi-day rain was simply this: sit next to the fire, feed it, shield it, watch it, for hours, for an entire day, sometimes longer, not because there was nothing else to do, but because nothing else mattered more. Letting the fire die wasn't just careless, it was potentially fatal for everyone in that cave, not just the person tending it, everyone. And this is where fire stops being just a survival tool and starts becoming something else entirely, the center of human life itself. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study comparing daytime conversations to nighttime fireside conversations amongst Ojibwe/Wansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. During the day, people talked about practical things, land disputes, resources, complaints, logistics. But at night, gathered around the fire, over 80% of the conversation shifted to something completely different. Stories, songs, ceremony. The firelight itself seemed to change what people talked about. It softened faces, it lowered tension, it created a kind of space where people actually opened up. The campfire wasn't just a heat source, it was the original social network, the original meeting place, the original stage. And what was shared around that fire wasn't small talk, it was survival knowledge passed directly from one mind to another, where water sources dry up in summer, which plants are safe to eat and which ones will kill you, where to find good flint, how to track a specific animal across difficult terrain. That knowledge had nowhere else to live except in the memory of the group, and the fire was where that memory got passed on, generation after generation. So when you strike a lighter today without thinking twice, you're holding the end result of hundreds of thousands of years of obsession, of ember carriers walking for miles to keep a coal alive, of people sitting motionless for hours feeding a flame stick by stick because the alternative was death, of a frozen traveler in the Alps who packed backup tinder just in case. Fire is the reason we could stay warm through winters our bodies were never built to survive. It's the reason we could cook food and grow bigger brains. It's the reason predators kept their distance at night. And it's the reason humans first started gathering in one place at one time to talk, to teach, to tell stories that would outlive every person sitting around that flame. Long before humans had language written down, before we had cities, before we had almost anything we'd recognize as civilization, we had fire, and we were absolutely obsessed with keeping it alive because we understood something maybe better than we understand it today. Lose the fire, and you don't just lose warmth, you lose everything that comes after it.